Hi, Tuesday, July 5th, 2016. Monaco 64 here, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. A few subjects to touch upon this morning. First, Standard Life Insurance in the UK, they suspended redemptions yesterday for their property fund, a 2.9 billion fund. They said that there's too much, too many investors trying to liquidate after Brexit, and they didn't have enough cash, so they've suspended redemption for the next 28 days. There was talk. Let's say there is talk, in the media. I've listened to someone at LBC. I think it was David Buick, a financial commentator here in the UK. He said it shouldn't have an impact on things, that it was an isolated incident. I personally don't think so. It could be, the first domino to fall. If you remember well, last financial crisis we had in 08, it started out with subprime in 07, and a lot of people said, "Oh, this is not going to have any impact on the main housing market. It's just isolated." And look what happened then. So I think we need to keep an eye on this, and the British pound is already reacting negatively this morning. We're down over 1% at 131.35. We've actually traded to a post-Brexit low of 131.13. The previous low had been 131.21. And I spoke about the British pound a few days ago. And as you can see by this, I talked about this chart, whether it was a bear flag or a bottom, and it looks like it wasn't a bottom because we're testing that bottom, and it looks like the consolidation might be finished, and that we could see another sharp leg down in the pound. We'll have to wait and see. A lot of volatility this morning. The Dow yesterday got up to 18,000, even though the markets were closed in the US. The Dow did trade as a future. Right now we're at 17,866, so down about 114 from Friday. Gold is 1345, down from yesterday's high, but up on Friday's US close of around 1341. Silver has been all over the place, and I'm not concerned about that. Silver 1983, up on Friday's close in the US, but down, of course, from a high of 21.15 yesterday. I think it's going to get very, very choppy. But all in all, I'm still positive for gold and silver. I wouldn't change my view. The other subject I like to touch upon is the Italian banking sector. That's starting to make a lot more news. Basically 20% of Italian loans, I think around 300 billion euros, are non-performing loans, and they're trying to keep kicking that can down the road, and they're having a tough time. Prime Minister of Italy tried to convince Merkel, Chancellor of Germany, to allow the Italian state to bail out some of these banks, but it's against EU rules. They're trying to convince the Europeans, the EU right now, of exceptional circumstances. And in April, at the instigation of the Italian government, the Italian banks formed a fund called the Atlas or Atlante Fund, and it's a private fund, so they can circumvent, the ban on state subsidy of the banking sector. And the funny thing about this fund is that it raises equity to save banks that are in trouble. But who buys this equity? There are Italian banks, big Italian banks, that are already in trouble. You see, the public market or investors have no interest in buying further equity in Italian banks. So this Atlas fund is really something that is not sustainable. And we'll have to see, if the EU allows the Italian government to actually inject money into this fund, the private fund. It's a mess. And I think we need to keep an eye out for Italy. Now there's talk that Monte dei Paschi di Siena, which is the oldest bank in the world that has been bailed out already, needs another 3 billion euros. Last week it was Banca Veneto that was bailed out with equity from this Atlas fund. It's like the blind leading the blind, this Atlas fund, basically. So that's another, trouble spot in the financial system. And the third one I'd like to talk about today was brought up by Kyle Bass, who's a hedge fund manager from Texas. Hyman Capital is his fund. He did very well in the subprime crisis. Hasn't done as well in the last few years, but he has looked deeply and into China, and he's saying that China, he sees it, their credit boom is coming to an end, and that we could see a big crisis coming up in China from their credit boom, and that it's much bigger than what we saw in 2008. And he says, and I quote, "China is way ahead in terms of excesses compared to world's excesses in prior crises." Sees it as the largest. He sees it as the largest macro imbalance in world history. And the other thing he says, Chinese officials will do what it takes to help China, and they won't be beholden to international institutions. And he sees it as an opportunity, but he sees a massive haircut in the Chinese GDP because of this crisis, something like 30%. He notes that in 2014, there was only one default in China. In 2015, there was 15. And so far this year, there's already 19 defaults. And he says that half of these are state-owned enterprises. So, and the other point he makes is that since April 11th, the Chinese corporate bond market has basically frozen up. And he sees the Chinese credit market crisis starting right now. He says the amplitude of the problem in China is almost 4 times greater than what happened in the US in 2007 and 2008. So that's another thing that people need to keep an eye on, the situation in China. And he said the Chinese officials are going to do exactly what the Americans did in the 2008 crisis. They're going to recapitalize the banks. They're going to slash the reserve requirement ratios for the banks. And they're going to cut rates to 0, and they're going to do QE. And he says that all that will be negative for the yuan, and that he sees a much bigger devaluation for the yuan. So those are the things I wanted to touch upon. The post-Brexit, situation for the UK, the British pound, the Italian banks, and the Chinese credit crisis that, according to Kyle Bass, is underway. And it's massive. It's the second biggest economy in the world. If they have a huge recession or depression and they devalue their currency, it's going to impact everyone else. And I guess that's why maybe the Chinese officials are pushing Chinese individuals to buy precious metals, silver and Bitcoin, to protect themselves against a falling yuan. So this Kyle Bass interview was on Rio TV. What's it called again? Sorry, Rio Vision, RioVisionTV.com. It is a subscription service, but there is a 7-day free trial, which I did, and I listened to the interview. Very interesting. I'll put the link below, so if you'd like to listen to what this guy's got to say. So that's it for now. We'll keep an eye on these markets, and if you like my analysis and my updates, please like, share, and subscribe. Bye.